Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, we're going to be covering all the tips and secrets that I have for Restoration Druids so that you can start climbing the ladder. In today's clip, we're going to be playing against one of the best Resto Druids in North America, no guard here in a solo shuffle. So the name of the game here with Resto Druid is to get your cooldowns on cooldown as soon as possible. So you can see that I pretty much tree form almost immediately. We're going to use Cenarian Ward on the target that we are expecting to be the main source of damage reception, which so far has been the rogue in the center, as we see Void Torrent being casted onto that target. Here we've got a smoke bomb down onto the elemental shaman. I could lob in some damage here, but I'm looking for a cyclone at low HP as that smoke bomb subsides to try and prevent the shaman from fully recovering during that time. Now the cyclone DR has ended on the druid, so I'm chasing the druid to switch that cyclone from the shaman onto the druid instead. This gets mass dispel from the priest. Now the bottom rogue is taking main target damage, so we're going to pre-Iron Bark. We get Cenarian Ward, and we are going to Swiftman the Cenarian Ward as soon as we can out of this crowd control chain and get a life bloom onto the center rogue. Enemies are never going to tunnel into Iron Bark. They are always going to swap. So immediately upon application of Iron Bark, expect to heal the next target, which is the other rogue in this instance. My team is swapping to the rogue, so I'm just trying to keep them healthy, stay behind the pillar, and avoid as much crowd control as possible while we wait for our DRs. I go for a Cyclone here onto the Shadow Priest, get interrupted and put quite far behind. We get a Tree of Life proc though with that Swiftmend. I really love this talent build. I'll have a link to my armory down below so you can copy my build if you would like to. Here we get a Cyclone onto the Shadow Priest. We're in a Bark Skin. We're fighting a caster comp that focuses on just doing pad damage. We're going to switch the Cyclone onto the Kidney Shot. So you don't really want to be frugal with your defensives. You want to play as efficiently as possible because this type of matchup is something that is likely going to come down to mana if you're going to be able to win. Here we're going to Cyclone the Shaman at low HP, try and prevent them from recovering. This baits the Shaman to Trinket, which means we can stun them full later. I get another Cyclone over onto the Shaman. Now I'm trying to switch that over onto the Shadow Priest, but we are taking a bit of damage here, so I Trinket out of the stun, duck behind the pillar, and go for Frenzied Regen. You got to be ready when you're going for all of these Cyclones to trade cooldowns if you're going to play this aggressively. We get a Cyclone onto the Priest, getting our Regrowth onto the entire team, and we get a double fear here, so I'm trying to dispel one of the rogues out that doesn't have Trinket. They go for Killing Spree. We get a Gouge onto the Druid. I'm looking for a Cyclone out of the Gouge, trying to keep this chain going as long as possible, but we likely need to Cyclone the Shaman low. I am dumping in these instant wraths, but we are going to go for another low health Cyclone. You really want to abuse this against teams that don't have a lot of interrupts. This team only has Wind Shear, and if I get Wind Sheared, it's not really the end of the game, so be aware of what you're fighting against and what your opponents have to when you really need to abuse Cyclone. Right now, I'm getting huge value, Cyclone after Cyclone, but I get sheared into a fear, and with this full fear, unfortunately, our rogue ends up going down through cheat death. And these are the risks of playing aggressive like this and not playing far away, is that you will get caught in some crowd control chain. So I should have been paying attention to my Omnibar, tracking the stun, tracking the silence, and tracking the fear so that I could stay away from the priest, try and get a pre-tranquility, or just even use tranquility at that point to reset my cooldowns before getting aggressive again. I feel like I really got ahead of myself. I felt like we were dominating this game. We were completely in control, and this is where aggression as a Resto Druid can really come back to bite you. But we're going to get into round two, and we're going to come back better, stronger, and faster. So what was the lesson to learn from this? This is something that's really good to do, is to record your gameplay and watch it back, because a lot of people are kind of delusional and a little bit clueless as to what has actually happened in a game. So recording it gives you definite results on what you can aim to improve. So in that last round, I should have used Tranquility either sooner to get cooldowns back to pre-Iron Bark, or tried to pre-immune the fear there and been tracking it. Now we got Shadow Priest Rogue. I see cheap shots on the Shaman. I don't want to open until the rogue does. We're going to overgrowth our rogue as he's been cheap shot, and we don't want him to get bursted down. So we get a pre-Cenarian Ward. A bit more worried about the rogue in the opener than the Shadow Priest. Shadow Priests have a lot of defensive cooldowns that are really valuable, like Dispersion, that is pretty much going to guarantee that they survive a rogue attack. So I'm not too worried about the Shadow Priest dying until after they don't have Dispersion or they don't have their Trinket. So in this position, I'm getting Cyclones onto the rogue, trying to alleviate my Shadow Priest so that they can free cast a little bit more. It can be really difficult, again, as a caster with a rogue on you to be able to get damage out. So I'm going for a lot of Cyclones to try and force the enemy to use some crowd control on me. We get a pre-Iron Bark here on the Priest. As soon as I see any sort of stun, I usually lob out an Iron Bark. We anticipate the Smoke Bomb. We're going to pre-Bear, Stampede away, bash the rogue, get some distance, mass entangle him out of the bash, keep him away from my team while we're swapping to the Druid. I get Shadow Meld re-stealth from the rogue. He's going to gouge our rogue, but he's dotted up. It's going to break. We're looking for Cyclones. We Cyclone the Druid at low health. We're going to swap off the Druid over onto the Shaman here. Our Priest is taking a lot of damage, so we're going to probably use Nature Swiftness here. Again, I'm not really frugal. If somebody's getting blasted really low health, I like just trading my defensive cooldowns, keeping my team healthy and aggressive, so that way I'm in a position to always be ahead of my opponents. We pre-sendward the Rogue, anticipating him to swap off the NS, but my Rogue's going all in with like a Cloak Evasion, which could be a bit reckless in the near future, and we need to be aware of that. We're tracking it here with Omni CD. I highly recommend that you get this add-on. We cyclone up the Rogue with no Trinket, but as they come out, they get a Kidney Shot. We get a Double Fear from the Priest, so I'm not too worried about taking much damage. Always monitor like what your teammates are doing as far as crowd control. We get a Kidney Shot here onto the Shaman. We go for Shadowy Duel. Druid uses Tranquility to immune my clone, and we end up getting the kill through the Shadowy Duel. So whenever you have a caster on your team, you want to be supporting them as much as you can in this instance. So I'm going really aggressive. I'm trying to find a lot of Cyclone opportunities. Against the Subtlety Rogue, though, it can be a little bit more risky. I think against Outlaw, you're a little more free to do that. Outlaw Rogue's not going to like immediately go on you and blast you out of the game. But when you're fighting the Subtlety Rogue, you may have to take it a little bit slower with the clones. Here I've got the Subtlety Rogue on my team. Again, we're going to be playing Elemental Shaman, Subtlety Rogue. Elemental Shamans don't really have to worry about getting interrupted as much, so cycloning isn't as much of a big deal, although you should still try and take advantage of it because Shadow Priests don't have ranged interrupts, Resto Druids don't really have ranged interrupts, at least not typically, and Outlaw Rogues have to use a lot of mobility to stop you from cloning. So this is another situation where you will want to be looking for opportunities. Rogue opens on my Rogue, so we're going to open right away, innervate, get Trents going, get into tree form likely as soon as possible as well. 3 Treants are healing him, and we're in tree form. So we're going to get Life Blooms up onto the Shaman as I'm expecting them to swap. Rogues always want to maximize their stun DR, so that Rogue just got stunned. Now they're going to go on my Shaman and stun him. So I'm expecting them to swap, and we're keeping our hots rolling on both DPS. We're looking for clones while there are no interrupts, and that forces the Priest to Trinket. So I mean, getting a Trinket on a clone is a really big advantage because now they don't have Trinket Void Shift for crowd control later on. So when you're able to find these opportunities, definitely take advantage of them. Rogue's overextending at me, so I'm baiting him and rooting him and cloning him out of range of his Druid to try and take him out of the game for as much time as possible. We get a cheap shot onto the Rogue. I see a kidney that I would like to clone out of. I could have used Heart of the Wild here. Blind Overlap. Again, we're in shuffle with no voice, but I think trying to cyclone out of CC that your team provides to you is definitely something to do. We get a cyclone onto the Priest. Rogue is getting low. We got Adaptive Swarm coming out onto our Rogue. That's going to boost our heals a lot. We have Cenarian Ward available. We're going to extend that Adaptive Swarm. Probably should have used Cenarian Ward and then extended. Adaptive by itself, not really the biggest value on a Swiftmend extension. You're trying to hit the Cenarian Ward as much as you can. We get a cyclone out of the Hex, keeping Life Bloom on ourselves, buffing up the hots. I'm kind of pre-hotting myself because the Rogue's getting close to me and I'm expecting them to attack me. We get a clone onto the Rogue after the stun lock. We can swap to the Druid or the Priest at this point. I'm really just trying to put the other team behind as much as possible. Priest is chasing me for a fear, and we did have Tranquility. So again, whenever you see somebody that's running at you, it's because they want to do something. They want to crowd control you. You can use Tranquility or Shadow Melt to try and pre-immune that incoming crowd control. We get swapped to in a cheap shot, so we're just going to Bark Skin. I'm not going to be greedy. It's Adrenaline Rush. I see a lot of Tendrils proccing from the Shadow Priest. We get a Hex on the Priest, so I'm going to clone him out of the Hex. I see a Kidney on the Druid. I want to clone him out of the Kidney. He Shadow Melts it. I'm still going to go for it. We get it. We go Tree of Life. We've got instant Wrath damage, Shadowy Duel, Tranquility not going to be enough, and we're able to close out the game. So these are the situations where you can be really flashy as a Restoration Druid, is when there aren't a lot of ranged interrupts. And so it's things like Shadow Priest, Shamans when they're not coupled with things like Warlocks. Usually Warlocks, Mages that are going to be a lot more difficult to deal with, where cycloning becomes really harder to do. But in lobbies like this with no mage and no warlock, you definitely want to be abusing it as much as you can. Also with the Heart of the Wild talents, your cyclones are going to be really fast, so you're going to be able to get them a lot easier. Honestly, I could have used Heart of the Wild at a lot of points early on in this game to go for those cyclones to make it a lot less risky on me, but now we got the Subtlety Rogue on the other team, so never got to readjust the way that we are going to be playing this one for sure. Always waiting for the Rogue to come out of stealth because I want to be able to predict his attacks and deny their initial pressure. I see the Shadow Priest popping PI, and it's kind of just like, whatever, you can PI on the Shaman, you're by yourself, like I'm not too worried. We hit for the Rogue, we bash the Rogue, and we kind of deny their opener. We go into Tree of Life immediately, but we get cloned. So Shadow Melding this clone would have been good. I think my Shaman tried to ground it, but they were able to kill off the grounding, and because I didn't get the Overgrowth off, we're actually in a very difficult position. So this is likely going to be big cooldowns. Our Shaman has burrowed under the ground. They Shadowy Duel us, which actually is good, because with the hots up and with the wall, there's no way the Shaman's going to die, and Shadowy Duel is like, the main win condition for a Subtlety Rogue. So as soon as that Shadowy Duel is gone, the next big threat is going to be a Smoke Bomb. So our Shaman has Trinket but no wall, so I'm expecting him to be the target. We're just going to clone up the Rogue, get our Shaman some space, keep pressure going on the Priest, pressure going onto the Druid. Is he a kidney shot? Rogue's free once again. We're going to mass entangle him, just always maximizing as much crowd control as possible so our Ellie Shaman can free cast and we can delay this stun as long as possible. So now he's got a kidney shot. I'm in bear form. I'm expecting him to kidney shot me and go on my Ellie Shaman or something like this. So I'm trying to like pre-hot him adaptive and pre-bear because they could attack me. I pre-bear, pre-adaptive, and he doesn't drop a smoke bomb. So I'm kind of patiently waiting, but I am going to trinket out of the silence. It looks like in this position with Void Torrent, free casting in the back, and the enemy rogue using their trinket means that they're going to be able to get a lot of damage out. So I'm going to respect the rogue's trinket with my trinket, swap the clone from the rogue to the druid, get pressure onto the priest with Heart of the Wild Moonfires, and dump in some Wraths, get dispersed, clone the disperse at low health, try and stop the druid from recovering. We get a hex over onto the druid. As that dispersion ends, I'm going to switch the clone onto the druid, continue to pump some Wraths over into the priest. I see the rogue getting low health behind the pillar as well. He's definitely a viable target. We get vanish and life swap. So now there's major cooldowns out of the way. Our shaman still has trinket, but we don't. We get caught in a fear here. Shaman tremors, but it's out of range, so we're in even more of a stressful spot. We get Cenarian Ward up. We're going to Swift Mend it, get a Treant and SM, and with that, he should be okay, but he's actually taking a remarkable amount of damage. We get a clone onto the rogue, denying the connection, top him off with some free caster regrowth behind the pillar to avoid anything from the Shadow Priest. We get put into a kidney shot here. They're swapping. I bark skin, but it's probably unnecessary, mostly because you can see the enemy rogue got stunned. Here we end up breaking a blind. This is a little bit unexpected. I was going for a bash clone at the same time they went for a blind, but Shadowy Duel on our rogue. We want to use Efflorescence and Tranquility whenever a Shadowy Duel happens on a target. Efflorescence is that green circle we put on the ground. Tranquility will heal through the duel, and it's pretty much the most amount of healing that you can do through a Shadowy Duel. We use Trank there just for the global to try and immune CC, and we try and get Cenarian Ward up with Adaptive here because our shaman is taking a lot of damage, and we're a couple seconds away from Nature's Swiftness. Really tough spot, but we got wall coming up. We don't have bark skin for ourselves, so I'm a bit worried about myself and the shaman, and honestly our rogue as well. We pre-arm bark the shaman as soon as he gets kidneyed, and we clone the priest, denying a lot of damage. Druid's coming close. I'm going to swap the clone over to the druid. Druid has no trinket. Our shaman is hotted up. We can go into Tree of Life here. We can get some more cyclones, and we can also use instant solar wraths. So we're going to go for a cyclone on the rogue. Druid goes for a clone. Looks like he got grounded on it. And as soon as we are in a healthy position here, I can start looking for wraths and start doing a lot of damage. I'm just keeping my shaman fully hotted, extending that Cenarian Ward as long as we can. And here come the solar wraths in tree form. We're just going to keep lobbing these in with the elemental shaman. And even though the rogue has evasion up, the shaman and my damage are putting so much pressure on the rogue. We knock him on the pillar. He's able to reconnect, but we have wall coming out of the stun. We trinket. We overlap. Again, dampening is really high, 71%. So I'm thinking like, you know, holding on to your trinket at this point in the game is going to be super greedy. We have Tremor Totem available for the fears, so trinketing out of a stun and having Tremor, I think it's going to put us in a good spot. We cyclone the rogue on Iron Bark while our rogue is cycloned and can't connect, and then we want to try and switch some crowd control over onto the druid as soon as we can. We get step kicked. We're going to go into bear form whenever that happens, but it baited the rogue out in the open, and he is going to get blasted. So you can play aggressive. You just need to be aware of when to try and play into bear form. If you get kicked, it's not a big deal because you can obviously go bear form, frenzied regen. If you're running the Oath of the Elder Druid as well, you can just get, you know, an extra Heart of the Wild proc and be really tanky in bear form and able to survive. So now we've got double caster into double rogue. This is, again, a really good situation where we can abuse low cyclones, but you may also just want to play safe and play max range. The dangers of playing max range against two rogues are smoke bombs and Shadowy Duel, right? There's two smoke bombs and Shadowy Duel. If you're playing too far away, those are going to be really problematic. So you only want to play far away when you've pre-hotted with Cenarian Ward or pre-hotted with Adaptive Swarm and extended them, so you know that that target is safe. Here they open on the shaman. I jump in, bash one of the rogues, innervate Overgrowth, but they kidney shot and they swap to me, and I have no hots, and the rogue is cloaked. Unfortunately, their druid trolls them and cyclones me. So I would have been in a lot of trouble there, but instead it's just going to be my priest using dispersion, and we can get a life on ourselves to get our hots rolling, get into tree form, get our treants out, and just maximum healing. Like I don't hold anything back in the opener pretty much. I am holding my Iron Bark, I suppose, but this druid playing aggressive means that we can swap to him, and that is something that you do want to do against Resto Druids, is when they're getting close in your face, you want to be attacking them. There's that smoke bomb. Shaman thunderstorms the rogue away, and it looks like he's not taking a huge amount of damage. That's why it's like smoke bomb is scary, but you need to also pay attention to how much pressure is actually coming out. We're going to Iron Bark the priest because he doesn't have dispersion. He used that in the opener, and our shaman still has wall. So I'm not too worried about the shaman dying. I can go for some cyclones potentially here. Adaptive Storm is out. We go in bears. The rogue is running towards us. I have trinket but no bark skin, so I'd really like to be in bear form for this kidney, which is why I'm just sitting in bear form. The adaptive and the hots are healing the shaman. I can rely on the wall if I need to, and I can just kind of camp bear form until they go for kidney shot. They're going on the Shadow Priest. Druid's casting clone, not able to stop it. Priest is in a smoke bomb, so me trinketing won't matter. He life swaps the shaman. So we need to get an overgrowth onto the shaman as soon as possible and try and get an NS here. We can't be greedy with the Cenarian Ward. He's too low health. If Cenarian Ward isn't already rolling above like 60% health, it's going to be really risky to try and rely on that. Shadowy Duel. So we can use Efflorescence here. We're going to put Efflorescence under the shaman. We're not using Tranquility because he's not taking a huge amount of damage at this point in time. Cenarian Ward up on the shaman, but we get put into a kidney shot. Priest doesn't have much. He's used Desperate Prayer. I have no Trinket for the blind. This is one of the scariest moments in the game. With Adaptive Storm and Life Bloom, though, it looks like he may actually be able to survive in this position. I can't believe it. Desperate Prayer is just about to end, and his Dispersion comes off cooldown. So we proc a Tree of Life. We're going to be able to battle back and get back into the game. I think my shaman must have tossed off some off heals during that time as well. We had Double Fear onto the Rogue and the Druid. I'm going to go for a clone onto the Outlaw Rogue. We get Cloak from the Subtlety Rogue. Resto Druid is honestly the best target in this type of matchup. Rogues are just impenetrable to casters, generally speaking. So if we can get the Resto Druid in a good spot, swap to him and clone Rogues so they can't attack or counter pressure, it'd be really good. We're in a kidney shot here out of bear form, so we're going to Bark Skin immediately. We have Empiric Embrace from the Shadow Priest healing us a bit, and the Shaman isn't CC'd healing us, but we're going to Iron Bark out of it. We're going to Overgrowth the Shadow Priest, expecting them to swap as the Shadow Priest still has no dispersion, and I have Iron Bark and Bark Skin up onto myself. So kind of anticipating a swap, and then we send Ward the Ellie Shaman. They're still attacking me, but this is fine because I can hold them in the open. We're going to use Tranquility, and this Tranquility is going to immune their assault on me any further, reset all of my cooldowns, and get me into a really good position. I've been healing the Shadow Priest honestly a little bit too much here. They've been really hard committed to the Shadow Priest, but they're thinking like, hey, the Shadow Priest isn't going down. Let's try go Druid instead. So the Cenarian Ward on the Priest isn't honestly getting a lot of value. This can be the difficulty of trying to predict enemies' attacks. I see a Hex. That's a great opportunity to cast a clone on the Rogue unimpeded. So we're going to get that Cyclone over onto the Rogue. Pull back away from the Druid, root up the Rogues, cycle in the Rogues even more, just keep them away as our Priest and Elemental Shaman are trying to generate pressure. And honestly, we're just trying to get into a deeper point of dampening. Wild Charge over, bash the Rogue, we get a Hex over onto the Druid. I get interrupted on my clone, but again, not a big deal. Now there's no interrupts for our Shadow Priest, and with that full Hex, we're able to drop the Outlaw Rogue in that position. So we're in a strong spot here now. 5 out of 6 rounds, going into 6 out of 6 rounds. First game, we honestly could have won, right? If I was tracking my Tranquility a little bit better and positioning on like how risky the situation was. I could have been away from the Priest, playing more defensively, got that Tranquility off, and being able to win. I think honestly, I just got overexcited with how well the game was going in the first round. But something to take into account is like your mentality in the game. Like, are you always monitoring the win condition of your opponent? Are you getting ahead of yourself? Are you playing too aggressive? In the Art of War book, it says that defense is the most valuable. If you make yourself undefeatable, you will eventually win. So never get too aggressive, get too ahead of yourself in those positions. Otherwise it's going to make it really difficult and give opportunities to your opponents that they otherwise wouldn't have had. Again, against Rogues, we're going to stay in stealth. We're going to wait and see where they go, and we would like to bash the Rogue. I think against Subtlety Rogue, I really like Wild Charge bashing. Wild Charge puts you behind the target. You can avoid the evasion. If they cloak, though, you've got to be careful because a lot of them are running the Midnight Veil where they're immune to physical, so watch if they cloak. Here, I think we just open up far away, potentially. Yeah, we get the Overgrowth, but Shadowy Duel and the Shadow Priest, I'm really happy about that when that happens, because if at worst case, the Shadow Priest is going to disperse. Best case, he doesn't even have to do anything. Shadow Priests are really tanky. I think they're one of the worst targets to use Shadowy Duel or Smoke Bomb on, so we're really happy that happened here at the beginning of this game, because now I don't need to worry about the duel on my Rogue, or potentially a duel on me and me getting one shot in that instance. We clone the Shaman, swap the clone from the Shaman over to the Rogue. We're in Tree of Life, we're fully hotted, so we can get aggressive now. We can either lob out some Wraths or some Roots. I've been spamming out Roots on the Shaman, now rooting the Rogue out of the clone, just taking this Rogue out of the game as long as possible. I see a Kidney Shot Smoke Bomb, I go for a clone. Again, it's not going to matter that I'm wind sheared here. The enemy Rogue is in a stun, and we're at full health, fully hotted, so I'm not worried about it. We'll just tank the interrupt. We pre-Iron Bark the Priest. I expected them to send a go here as soon as the Rogue came out of the stun. They do, but they send it on me. I squeeze in a Cenarian Ward. We got Bark Skin. Cenarian Ward, Bark Skin. We're never going to die through this, so we're in a great position to just recover, but we do get hexed. We're going to Adaptive Swarm the Priest, but he gets cloned, and that's really bad with the build that I'm playing. If my Adaptive Swarm gets immuned and it can't continue to bounce and spread, I lose a lot of value. So that one clone right there puts us in a pretty tough position. We're going to Overgrowth onto the Priest, get him fully hotted. Rogue's got another Kidney Shot. I've got no Bark Skin. They swap over to our Rogue, though. So I was a bit worried about myself getting attacked here. Our Rogue still has Cloak, Evasion, and Trinket, so I'm not too afraid, and Cheat Death. So Cheat Death's going to proc and we get Vanish, and we still have Trinket, Evasion, and Trinket Cloak. Should have shapeshifted this Hex. This is something to be aware of against Shamans and Mages, especially if you're going to play aggressive. We get a Gouge here, so I Cyclone out of the Gouge. Rogue's getting low. I'm Heart of the Wild Moon firing him. I'm jumping in. I want to bash the Druid. I want to try and get more CC. I feel like we're really close to a kill. We clone up the Elemental Shaman. Shadow Dance from the Rogue, but oh my god, the Druid trolled his team again here, cycloning me on the dance from the Rogue. I think he was going to send the one-shot there onto me. We get cloned again, him, but our rogue trinkets out. Looks like he's going to be fine. Life bloom's up on the priest. We got our treants out. Adaptive Swarm over onto our priest. But again, maybe this is a waste of Adaptive Swarm on the priest. They're sending damage and actually duel him again. So I'm really happy that they duel him. We're going to Efflorescence and Tranquility. Again, that's your counter bomb strat. It allows the priest to hold on to Dispersion, but we're going to overgrowth our rogue because the enemy rogue always wants to be stunning something if there's a stun DR. So expecting them to swap to the rogue or myself after that go on the priest. Here we see a cheap shot on the rogue, so I'm tossing in some wraths, trying to get some pressure onto him. We've got silence on the druid. Always want to, when you're playing with the rogue, is add a little bit of extra damage during the stun locks when you can. That little bit of extra damage, a Moonfire or a Wrath, can sometimes push the enemy over the edge or force an overlap of cooldowns. We're going to charge towards the druid, bash into clone. We get the clone. The shaman looks like he's going to be the target right now, and we're just kind of babysitting the druid. We get burrow. I'm looking for more clones. We get a second clone. Rogue is feared. Going to look for a third clone. Rogue comes over for a gouge anyways. Shaman's behind the pillar trying to recover. Void Torrents out. We get sheared on it. Hexes are coming. We get a Tree of Life. We're immune to it for a moment. We get put into a kidney, but the shaman is so far behind right now that it may not ultimately matter. He's just dying even through free cast. A Tree of Life heals. Hex is coming. Snaring Wards out. We get a cheap shot onto the shaman. Our rogue is cloned though and can't get any damage, so I'm tossing Moonfires in on the shaman, and he actually does die. I was thinking that I was about to go for a clone there at low health, but we were able to take the win, take the W. And you can see it's in these types of lobbies and situations where there's not a lot of ranged interrupts, or the ranged interrupts aren't as threatening, like only wind shear, where you really can pop off as a Resto Druid and carry a game. So thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that you've got some insight from this and it helps you in your gameplay and your rating pushes. So hit the subscribe button if you want to support the channel. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.